So welcome everyone. My name is Arturo Kerbel. I help organize all these Yiddish things that Tamara told you about. And well, we are getting involved with other Jewish languages because because it's a very special way of making community, of creating new networks. And it's a totally different way to explore Judaism as well as a culture. So we were thinking, what type of name could we choose for such a festival or such a celebration of Jewish culture? And we wanted to come up with something like more universal. Many words, even if they are in Hebrew, and many of the Jewish languages may have them, pronunciation would be very different. So we weren't sure which one like to use or why this pronunciation or not the other. So in the end, we came up with the idea of the Rimon, of the pomegranate. The pomegranate is a very central symbol in Judaism. It has a very long history, its presence in Jewish art and mosaic and all sorts of sacred things have been decorated by that. So we're trying to conceive of all the different Jewish groups or Jewish cultures around the world, as if we were all different seeds within the pomegranate, but we're all part of the same fruit. So we want to celebrate together with Ashkenazim, with Sephardim, with Yemenites, with whoever wants to experience other sides of Judaism that maybe you haven't experienced before, precisely because you haven't been in touch with that cultural heritage of other groups of Jews. So welcome everyone. I want to thank Bobby Iskhakov from the United States. He's a young Bukhari speaker, of course, with Bukhari heritage, and I'll rather let him introduce himself. I'm very happy to meet you like this virtually. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, I wanted to thank Yiddish House London and all the sponsors of this beautiful presentation and the celebration festival of languages. My name is Fabius Hakov. I am from Miami, Florida, United States. I was born and raised here. Funny thing is, my mother is from Samarkand, Uzbekistan, Soviet Union, of Bukharian Jewish heritage. My father is of Ashkenazi, Russian Jewish heritage from Belarus, also the Soviet Union. And I just, growing up, I was always just fascinated with languages and the culture of where my parents come from. And I was really close to my late grandmother, who she's actually, her picture is right behind me. It's in my living room. It's something I walk in when I come from work every day. Is just as an inspiration to me, because she loved Bukharian culture, language, history. She spoke it fluently. In the last years of her life, I was very close to her, and she was able to instill that language and that love of the culture and the heritage with me. And it's something I'm very proud of. And whenever people ask me like what I am, yes, I am also a Russian Jew, Eastern European Ashkenazi Jew, but I tell them proudly I'm a Bukharian Jew, or a Jew from Central Asia. And I explain to them, you know, about the history and what it is, and our language and our culture, our heritage. And I'm very happy and proud about that. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what Bukharian Jewish language is, or Bukhari, or Bukhori, as we say it in the native tongue. And I'm going to share with you three pieces. One is a phrase, kind of Q&A, and phrases just so you can learn a little bit how we speak and how it's pronounced. Another is going to be a poetry reading song about Jerusalem, which I will sing. Unfortunately, I don't know how to play any instruments, but as a hobby of mine, I do sing in Bukharian a lot amongst family and friends. So that's something like a passion of mine. And then finally, a folk song that is sung at weddings and at other cultural events that most of the community, the older generation, know by heart because these are songs that have been sung for generations. So a little bit of a background. Yes, you have, who has a question? Yeah. I'm sorry, remind me your name. It's just because we got cut.
I'm Tamara, and so yeah, basically, just before you finish, like introducing all of what we will be learning from you, I just wanted to say a couple of other things related to the program today. After Bobby, Sarah Benor from the Jewish Languages program will come and tell us a little bit about Jewish languages overall as an introduction for our festival. And so we're very excited that you will be covering the some basic information about Bukhari and also some artistic part. Before we start already with Bukhari, I would just like everybody to write in the chat, where are you based? And if you happen to speak any Jewish language, so we get to know each other a little bit just before we start with Bukhari. If you don't mind, Bobby, if people can just share where they are right now or where they come from, whatever you want to share with us. And if you speak any Jewish language, and what is that language? So I would like to read a little bit. Beginner in Yiddish from Oxford, Ohio. Great. David Salem in San Francisco, working on Hebrew. You speak very well Hebrew, David. Speak Hebrew and Ladino, really interesting. Okay, and another thing, great, in Berlin, and Yiddish, I can see a lot of Yiddish, and of course, Bobby, Tajik, and very little Yiddish, excellent, learning Hebrew. I would like as well if you can share with us if you have heard about Judeo-Tajik before, about Bukhari. Personally, I only learned about Bukhari when I was planning a trip to Uzbekistan. So it's incredible how little I knew about Jewish languages overall before embarking in this project. Great. We have Bruria Vegan, who is a lecturer in Yiddish at Oxford. Excellent. So we're all over. And now I would like to Bobby to formally start. As I said, just one last reminder, by the end of the whole session, I'm going to open different groups for people to, if you want to practice a little bit your Hebrew or your Ladino, you will be able to enter these breakout rooms to actually hold a conversation in whatever Jewish language you know a little bit or a lot. Okay, so thank you so much, Bobby, and we're very much looking forward to listening to you.
Thank you, Tamara. So a little bit of a background, because I know Sarah Benor will probably touch on that, but what my language is basically, it is the Jewish dialect of the Central Asian form of Persian. So the language they speak in Iran, and then one of the official languages in Afghanistan, and the official language of Tajikistan. It is spoken by the Jewish community of Central Asia that lived in the area of what is the former Soviet Union of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan. And how it's unique due to the influence of other languages such as Russian, because of Russian influence since the late 1800s and in the Soviet times until recently, they were under Russian and Soviet rule. So a lot of Russian has entered the language, as well as the Turkic languages such as Uzbek and other Turkic languages spoken in the region, because most Bukharian Jews come from Uzbekistan, and the dominant language of the state is Uzbek, even though the main language of Bukharian Jews has always been the dialect of Persian or Tajik we call Bukharian. So I'm just going to share my screen with you guys, showing you a little bit of the common phrases and how it sounds and how it's pronounced. The Bukharian language has a lot of differences with other dialects of Persian spoken in Afghanistan and Iran because of the pronunciation. The pronunciation is a bit different because of the isolation of Central Asia compared to the other countries such as Iran and Afghanistan for hundreds of years. So we tend to mix a lot of Hebrew as well. That's what makes it a Jewish language, and Aramaic words, as well as a lot of words come from Arabic because of that Persian influence, and a lot of Persian languages have Arabic in them due to Muslim conquest and just history. So to say hello, there's two ways to say it. Basically, we say shalom instead of shalom. So the vav, when it's at the end of the word or when it's a o in Bukharian, becomes So it's a very like guttural type of o. So we say shalom. And then the direct from Arabic salam is pronounced salom, salom. So you say hello, you say shalom, or you say salom.
I would just like
yes.
to invite everybody to take advantage of the fact that we're on Zoom, and you can mute yourselves and try to repeat as Bobby is saying, so we can take home.
Be interactive.
Just a couple of things you'll be able to take home, so we can practice our how to say these words with our microphone off. Thank you, Bobby.
Mm-hmm. Shalom or salom? Anyone? It's okay if you're shy. Anyone? Or how about shalom aleichem? Shalom aleichem. So when we have ayin, and this is something very unique to the Bukharian Jewish language, when we have ayin, it's pronounced very guttural and more stronger than you would in Hebrew or in modern Hebrew. Instead of it's ah. So it's more like from the back of your throat, guttural like that, ah. So shalom aleichem. Shalom aleichem. And then the response would be va'aleichem shalom, which is just like in Arabic, wa alaikum assalam. So good morning would be safro tovo, which is direct translation from Aramaic. Safra meaning morning, tova meaning good. So good morning, safro tovo. And then the answer would be tovo safro, which is just like shalom aleichem va'aleichem shalom. Welcome. So, Khush Omadi, when you're speaking to someone who is like a friend or very informal, it's a less respectful way to say hello to someone. There is, like in Latin languages or in Romance languages, we have the tu and vos, or tu et vous in French, or tu y usted in Spanish. This is the same thing. Or ti and vi in Russian. This is the same. We have that also in Bukharian. And you would say Khush Omadi for someone as a friend or informal. But Khush Omaded is the general for the formal way to say it to one person. So if you were speak to someone with respect and they're referred to as Shuman, which means you, but respectfully, it's like vous in French or vous or usted, Russian, and in Spanish, it's the same. And then as a pluralized form, which is you all, which is like ustedes in Spanish, or vous in Russian, or vous in French, as more than one, it is omadeton. So you would say welcome, khush omadeton, welcome. So to all of you, I say khush omadeton, welcome to this beautiful celebration of language. The next word, and this is another guttural pronunciation, is nars. So we have a letter which is very similar to the French R. We call it rein. It comes from Arabic. It sounds like a r sound. So it's like almost not like a ch we have in Hebrew, but more like a r in French, the R. It's very guttural. And we would say narzi, like meaning, are you well? Are you good? Narzed with a D or a T, depending on the if it's literary or if it's colloquial. The D's, sometimes when they come at the end of words, they tend to be turned into T's. So you might hear narzed or you might hear narzet, depending on the formalities. And then the pluralized form is narzeton, meaning, are you well? Are you all right? How are you? And then the actual way to say, how are you, is chi tui. So chi means what? Tui means, are you? So that is you informal singular. And then chtuyed is, how are you formal? Chtuyed. And then chtuyeton is like, how are you all? Okay, let's keep going down. Okay, chi gapoi toza. Sometimes that is the gapo, means literally talk or speech or things that are going on, like what's going on. And then when you make it into colloquial, I have in parentheses sometimes like different pronunciations, because there is a colloquial way we speak, which most people know if they know how to speak the language. And then there's the formal literary form that when one writes poetry or when one writes literature, that's how it's written. So it can sound very, very formal and not very colloquial. And most Bukharian Jews today don't know the literary form because Bukharian isn't taught in schools like it used to be. It's a home language. It's something you pick up from your parents or your relatives or something you hear. And mostly when we speak informally. I had the opportunity actually learn it the formal way, and I'm just gonna give you a little snippet if you guys are interested. And you could always ask me after, or you could find me on Facebook, Fabius Hakov. You could send me a message. There is a book that I helped edit. This is called Easy Bukharian. You can see it right here. It is a study guide in English language about the language of the Bukharian Jews. I helped publish this, not publish, I helped edit this 10 years ago, or it's going on 11 years. The author is another enthusiast about the Bukharian language. His name is Emmanuel Rybakov. He is a Bukharian Jew from Tashkent, Uzbekistan. And one of the things he was doing many years ago was teaching young Bukharian students at Queens College and non-Bukharians, those who wanted to learn the language in New York City, in Queens, about the language. So if you guys are interested, you can find that book on Lulu. It's only $14.99 plus shipping, and it is a great way to learn about the informal and formal ways of how to use the language, and with all sorts of things in there. There's poetry, there's songs, there's stories, there's blessings and curses. There's all sorts of things that, you know, I would love to talk to in this presentation, but that would take a very long time. So if you want some more information, please hit me up. Chigavoy toze or chigavoy toze, what's new or what's the talk? Chigavoy toze. Toze means new. Sahat salomat haste or Sehat salomati haste or Sehat soch salomat hasti. This is formal and informal. Hasti informal, formal informal. And we have another letter. The H tends to be more of an Arabic H when it's guttural, when the words come from Arabic, and it's more of a ha sound, just like in Arabic. And this actually letter is one of the unique things about the Bukharian Jewish dialect that other Persian dialects don't use, especially in Iran. They don't distinguish between the regular H and then the other Arabic H, but we do. You would say, I'm well, manaz. Manaz or manazam. Is more like you putting it to yourself, like grammatically that means to ami. And binoi just means good. Binoi, man binoi, like things are good. Thank God, you would say Chudo bashkur or Chudo shkur. Chudo is God, and ba or ya is like a place marker, meaning to or onto. So both can be used interchangeably. Chudo shkur, Chudo bashkur.
We have a question.
Yes, please, please.
The question from Julia Vegan is if Bukhari is written in Hebrew or in Latin characters.
Okay, historically, Bukharian language was written in Hebrew script, as is Yiddish and many other Jewish languages. And then when the Soviets took over Central Asia, they wanted to pretty much instill socialist ideals onto the local populations, both Jews and Muslims living there. And the Muslims, with their own dialects, wrote in the Arabic script, and the Jews wrote in Hebrew script. And they wanted to pull them away, one, from their religion, to take them away from reading the Quran or reading the Tanakh and focus on socialism. And so they forced them to change it to the Latin script. And the script I'm showing you is very similar to the one that was used in the 1920s when they changed it, but it's not completely the same because there are a little bit of modifications of the letters that I can't even type on here that you could see. And then once Stalin came into power and wanted everyone to know how to speak and read Russian, then they forcibly changed it to Cyrillic script. Most Bukharian Jews today do not know how to read Bukharian in Hebrew unless they live in Israel and have like a background on how to read it properly. If most Jews who do know Bukharian, as myself, I know how to read it in all three scripts. It is written today mostly either in Latin, what I'm showing you, and this is ease to make sure everyone can read it. But most printed materials now, because most Bukharian Jews lived under Soviet rule, are in Cyrillic, Russian script, with some modified letters, modifications there. So it really depends on who you're speaking with. Some Bukharian Jews who immigrated to Israel before the Soviets took over and only learned how to read it Hebrew probably could read it better in Hebrew than they could in other things. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Because I know I'm going super fast.
Do we have a capital of Bukhari, and was it Sarmar? Because it's the one that it's usually associated the most.
A capital with like the Bukharian Jews or the language?
Both. Like there's an epicenter where we would still find people that speak Bukhari outside of Israel.
Yes, outside of Israel and the United States. There are still Bukharian Jews. There's a community still in the city of Bukhara, which gives the name. Why we're called Bukharian Jews, I'm sorry I didn't go over that. The Bukharian Jews of Central Asia for hundreds of years lived in this, what was called the Emirate, and before that it was the Khanate, or it was whatever was left of Genghis Khan's empire that was broken up. It was first known as a Khanate, or like a princedom, and later known as an Emirate or Imorat in Persian and Bukharian. Where most of the Jews of this region live and spoke this language. And then later when the Russians took over, that's what they referred to us as. And then we started to refer to ourselves as that. But originally we referred to ourselves as Israel, meaning Israel or Jews or Israelites, or Yahudi, meaning Jews. So we did not refer to ourselves for this period of time as Bukharian Jews. This is a very 19th and 20th century term that we just continue to use to present day. So cities that would still spoken is mainly in Uzbekistan, in the cities of Bukhara, Samarkand, and Tashkent, where you still have Bukharian Jews living in very small numbers. The majority have left, have immigrated to the West, have moved to Israel or the United States, Canada, Austria, Germany, Australia. Those are like the main centers of where the community is now. So Bukhara, Samarkand, and Tashkent, those are the cities in Uzbekistan where there still are Bukharian Jews speaking Bukharian. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, I'm just gonna have some more choi, that's tea. And so when I do these presentations, I love to have tea because I get thirsty, speaking a lot. The traditional drink of Bukharian Jews is green tea, which is what I'm having right now. So to continue how to say some things, to say, what is your name? You say, nomi tu che. Nomi tu, what is your name? Informal. Nomi shumo che. Shumo meaning you, but the formal way, like usted in Spanish. What is your name? Nomi man, my name is. Nomi man, Bobby. Well, I said it in a Bukharian accent, but Nomi man, Bobby. My name is Bobby. To say thank you, you say rahmat. And when Bukharians say thank you, they take their hand, their right hand, and they place it on their heart. You say rahmat. This is not just a Jewish thing. This is a very Central Asian cultural thing that Uzbeks, Tajiks, and other peoples in the region do. So we say rahmat. When we say thank you very much, we say rahmati kalon. Kalon means large or big or a lot of things. And rahmati means thanks. It actually, the word comes from Arabic, meaning mercy. But in this sense, when we use it this way, it means thank you. When you are saying please or as a response or you're welcome, you can use the Hebrew term b'chavud, but instead of saying b'chavud, you say b'chavud. Like I said, the vav becomes more like a This is why you see, like here on the screen, the U has a little marker on the bottom. That's one of the letters in Latin script. Or marhamat, which comes from Arabic and comes from the same root as rahmat, but it's like please or you're welcome. Thank you. And then to say bye, you say sahat boshi or sahat boshet, which literally means may you be healthy. And this is, you hear this all the time. We're on the phone with grandfather, I'm on the phone, or I'm FaceTiming him, or I'm in person, or saying goodbye. You say sahat boshet or sahat boshi, meaning may you be healthy. Like that is the common way to say goodbye amongst Bukharian Jews, like may you be well, may you be healthy. And then there's also the Turkic way, the Uzbek way to say it, which, like I said, Uzbek has crypted its way into our language. You say chayr. And the X in Latin script is a ch, just like the Hebrew chaf, or in some Spanish-speaking countries, the chota, when it is like very guttural. I know some Spanish-speaking countries do not have it as guttural. It sounds more like a ha, but in this case, it's a ch. And then we have see you later. So see you later would be tol didana. It's like literally until I see you again, or until we see each other again. So it's like tol didana. So that's some common phrases. And now I'm going to pass over into a poem written by a very famous Bukharian Jewish poet. He's no longer living. He passed away years ago from an illness, but he was one of the most respected and well-known Bukharian Jewish writers of the time. His name was Ilyas Malayev. He was not only a poet, but he was a musician, playwright, and virtuoso. He knew how to play many different traditional instruments. He wrote not only in Bukharian Jewish language, but in the Tajik non-Jewish dialect, in Uzbek, in Russian, Armenian, and other Turkic languages such as Azerbaijani. He was a linguist and virtuoso, and one of my inspirations to go into all the things I love to do. I hope to one day, be as successful and smart as Ilyas Malayev. He was born in Uzbekistan, and he was a poet and singer who sang on national TV in Soviet times. And the Soviet authorities never let him publish his own works during communist rule. Only in independence time, when in 1991, he was able to publish some of his works, his plays, on stage, but they were still having issues of anti-Semitism even after the Russians left, and you had the Uzbeks in charge. So he was forced to immigrate to the United States in 1992. And with his family, he brought everything over. And then the community came over in Queens, New York. And he continued to flourish with his poetry, his music. He established one of the only Bukharian Jewish musical ensembles of traditional music called Maqam, with other musicians and poets. And they still perform today, but they've been fragmented since his death, and other members have either gotten old or don't perform anymore, or they still try to do what they can for the community, but they were very famous in their time in the 90s and the early 2000s. So Ilyas Malayev wrote a lot of poetry in the traditional language. And one of them was a song about Jerusalem. And for Bukharian Jews, for as long as I can remember, have always been Zionist, have always supported Israel, have always had a love for Israel and for Jerusalem. Many of them, that's why they moved to Israel during the Soviet Union time, after and even before. So this is a song about Jerusalem, and the word for Jerusalem in Bukharian is Yerushalayim, which is literally the Hebrew word, but spoken in a Bukharian accent. So I am going to sing this song for you, and you can basically see to the right side of the screen. Everyone can see the screen, right? I don't want it to be like, oh, you guys can't see. Okay, good. Basically a translation of what I'm singing, but just to reiterate, Bukharian Jewish language is very, very dense. The formal, like, literary form is very close to standard literary Persian or Tajik or Iranian Persian or Afghan Persian. So sometimes it's very hard to translate it word for word of what is actually there. And you'd have to just like learn the language and like, you know the context clues to actually like get the gist of what's going on. But I did my best to translate it so that you guys could understand. And without further ado, here I go. Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, mash'ali toboni man, doi movo vastabartu davruham davroni man. Hargahe kutiravam nur megira chashmoni man. Khonda tu ra megirat zavq lutfu ham ehsani man. Kuchahayat baghi firdavsi charaghan ast mudam. Khanahayi sarbalandu simuzar afshani man. Shahri zebai jahanu gulshani rui zamin. Dar sari baghat bikhanat bulbuli khushkhani man. Madani dinu diyanat koni ilmu marifat. Hammakani alimanu madani irfani man. Dar zamini tu padar babay ma talim girift. Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, ba tu qurban jani man. Khonda Ilyas tarifi shahri padar babay ma. Khonda Ilyas tarifi shahri padar babay ma. Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, nami tu hast dili shadani man. Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, nami tu hast dili shadani man. Thank you. Does anyone at this point have any other questions, like about the song, about what I spoke, or anything else before we move to the last part? And that's a little long, but I promise not to take too much of your time because I know everybody's busy.
I got a question. Where
Yes, go ahead.
within Soviet and Stalinistic censorship, were many of these documents in Bukhari erased, or how is it related within Soviet censorship?
They were not allowed to publish anything after 1938. Bukharian Jews were later then pushed into the Persian-speaking group of Tajiks because the Soviet authorities, looking at our language and looking at the language of the non-Jews, the Muslims, the Tajiks, considered them to be the same language, even though in colloquial sense, in the spoken form, in the informal spoken form, it varies a lot from the Muslim form in terms of some expressions we use and the way we pronounce certain words and just the flow of the language. So they were not allowed to publish anything. And all the books and anything related to Jews and Bukharian Jews were put away, were kept away, were stowed away, or not allowed to be published anymore. They couldn't publish anything about Jews or anything like that because of state-sponsored anti-Semitism. So anyone being called a Bukharian Jew in this sense, or the Bukharian Jewish language, anything referring to that, all of that ceased post-1938, and Bukharian Jews were forced to either go to Tajik language schools and learn the standard form of their language, Persian, but not the Jewish dialect, but they spoke that at home, or Uzbek, and then eventually most just went to Russian schools because Russian was put in prestige amongst over any other language in the Soviet Union. And most Bukharian Jews today don't speak Bukharian, they speak Russian, or their families speak Russian, and then their kids might speak Hebrew, English, or German, depending on which country they live. Thanks.
We also have a question from David Salem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in the chat, but I don't know if you would like to repeat it, David.
Oh yes, someone has offered an answer, but I wondered how the Jews of these Central Asian Turkic-speaking countries, it seemed as though the countries where Bukharian Jews come from are primarily countries where Turkic dialects are spoken. How did the Jews end up speaking a dialect of Persian?
So the theory is that one theory, there are many theories and there's a lot of debate, like where do we come from? Bukharian Jews in themselves came after the first temple was destroyed in whatever BCE it was, 5 something, by Nebuchadnezzar, and were then exiled to Babylon, modern day Iraq. And those Jews who stayed there didn't go back to Jerusalem when the Persian Empire emerged and allowed Jews to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, Cyrus the Great. They went eastward. They went eastward into Iran and Afghanistan, and later made their way up into the Central Asian region known in Greek as Transoxiana, and in Arabic it's called Ma Wara al-Nahar, meaning what is beyond the river. And beyond the river, they mean the Oxus River or the Amud Darya, which is one of the largest main rivers there, and it flows in between Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, and also separates Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Afghanistan, a natural border. And they spoke Persian in Iran, or they spoke New Persian or Middle Persian, and then eventually that developed into what we know today as Bukharian, which is also just a sister language of the language spoken there by non-Muslims, Tajik. And Uzbeks and Turkmens and Kyrgyz and Kazakhs, the Turkic-speaking peoples who are native actually to lands more east, like the lands where it's called the Altai Mountains. And this is another theory about Turkic peoples, where they actually come from. They were nomads who then came into this region and conquered it. and then they spoke a non-Persian language and then took over this region. The only nation or people or country that is non-Turkic speaking that remains is Tajikistan. And that is a Persian, mainly Persian, Tajik speaking people and region. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other question? You're welcome. No more questions? Yes, go ahead.
So I wonder if you could give a little overview of what written literature, what the literature is like, what time period it spans, what that's like, and also the book you mentioned about the language is you put in the chat where we can get that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll write it down. I'll write it
Great.
down. Okay.
Okay, you can see it already in the chat.
Bukharian Jewish literature, back before there was Uzbekistan or a Bukharian emirate, was mainly Persian literature, Judeo-Persian literature. Before Bukharian language solidified as what it is today, it was part of the greater Persian-speaking Jewish community. And there were people such as, and I'm not like the expert on the literature, I'm more of the language part. And a good friend of mine, I'm not sure if he's attending this presentation, his name is Ruben Shimonov. He can tell you all about Bukharian Jewish literature, starting from the 16th century all the way to today. And basically it started as part of Judeo-Persian literature, spoken like in Iran and the region. This was all one big Persian empire back in the 16th century. When then the empire fragmented and Central Asia was taken over by Uzbek Khans and princes, that's when it started to solidify in its own language. And in the 19th century, like one of the founders of our modern literature was named Shimon Chochom or Shimon Chacham. Was born in Bukhara, was a descendant of Maimonides Rambam, a grandson of Yosef Maravi, a Moroccan Sephardic rabbi who had immigrated to Bukhara to basically tell the community about Israel and about Torah and to try to make them Zionists, essentially. And a lot of Bukharian Jews after that period, if they could, and if they wanted to, try to get to Israel. So in Israel, when Shimon Chacham arrived in the late 19th century, he started printing books in Hebrew language. In the I think Ruben is here, in the language of the Bukharian Jews written in Hebrew script. And this was then the literary language of what we know today as Bukharian Jewish, with less Russian influence. The modern one that we speak today is very, very Uzbek and Russian sprinkled, like very heavily influenced by Uzbek and Russian because of the Soviet Uzbek and Soviet Russian influence in the republic where we lived. And literature, there was literature in the early 20th century. There were books for kids to go to school and learn their traditional language. And there were poems and plays and music, all sorts of things written. And then by 1938, when Stalin decided that Bukharian Jews were not to be a nationality that was going to be having their own republic or their own language, he closed everything. And then you didn't see that on like a large scale until Bukharian Jews started immigrating to Israel, where they had free press, and the United States and the West, where they could start publishing their own literature again. So during the Soviet times, a lot of that was hush-hush or forbidden because they did not want to mention Jews because of anti-Semitism. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I give you guys the finale? I hope you'll enjoy it.
I was just thinking after, I can see that Julio might have a question.
Okay.
or not? Okay, no. Yeah?
Yeah, I do. What's the geographic, because geographically, the region of Uzbekistan is to a certain extent close to where Ladino and Yiddish could have been spoken. Is there any connection between your language and either Ladino or Yiddish? And what is it?
In terms of linguistically, like the language family, no, because Ladino comes from medieval Spanish or Castellano Romance, and Yiddish comes from medieval German, High German. In terms of linguistically as a Jewish language, all three have ties to Hebrew and Aramaic in their speech and in the terms we use, like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, and like this song shows. However, linguistically, like as like language families, they're all different. Ladino is a Romance language, Yiddish is a Germanic language, and Bukharian is a Indo-Iranian or a Persian language, or a part of the Persian language family. But all three have, you know, ties with Hebrew and Aramaic terms in them.
And I would just like to add that it's there's a very interesting history of hundreds of thousands of Yiddish-speaking refugees who went to the east and ended up in Uzbekistan, and that they were writing in Yiddish, and they were writing about Uzbekistan, about what they saw. There are a couple of writings about the Bukharian Jews. You have the Yiddish Soviet theater performing together with the Uzbek National Theater, Khamsa, during the, I think it was 1942 in Tashkent. So there is a point where they actually are together in the same territory. And I think there are some studies about Yiddish speaking refugees in Uzbekistan. So I think that's also really, really interesting in terms of these different groups coming into contact during the Second World War.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'd be happy to answer. I'm sorry, it's a lot of information at once.
No, it's amazing. I just wanted to suggest that maybe as before Sarah comes and after your final presentation, we can do breakout rooms, maybe 3 or 4 of them, and share your documents so people get to actually say a couple of things in Bukhari. What do you think about that, Bobby?
Absolutely. How would I share the document though?
What I'm thinking is about, you could share that in the chat.
The chat. Oh, okay,
for people to have it. That will be great. But also we'll have like probably 4 breakout rooms. So Germán, you, I, and Arturo will be sharing that on our own screen so people are able to access it. What do you think about that? Raise your hand if you would like to have a little bit of a conversation already in Bukhari. Your electronic hand, if you, I do want, so I'll put my hand up. Okay, great. I can see some hands up. Okay, we'll make a group after your final presentation.
Okay, so now I'm going to get to like one of my favorite pieces of the whole presentation, and music is just something I love so much about this language. We are a very musical, very loud, very like vibrant people, just like Moroccan Jews or Mizrahi Jews. We are ourselves Mizrahi Jews. We practice a form of Sephardic Judaism, and we love to make music and sing and be loud and be happy. And one of the things that I like is wedding music, but traditional wedding music, not like the stuff you hear today, which is like a mix of Russian and Armenian stuff and Hebrew, and sometimes they put reggaeton in there as well, but like the really nitty-gritty traditional stuff in the Persian language. So in Bukharian Jewish language, the folk songs is literally called ashulaho, chalqi, yahudiyoni, buxorii. Ashula is a song, chalqi, which means folk or the people, it's an Arabic word, and yahudiyoni, buxorii means Bukharian Jews. So, like I said, this is also in a very like literary and just very deep poetic verse. This is poetry, but this is sung. And to translate it like word for word, so you might see like, okay, like the first stanza says, I saw on the street a young girl looking like a thin boot. It's like, okay, if we wrote that in English, that's not very, you know, attractive, or like something that's like, oh, a thin boot. But for poetic purposes and rhyming and just in their sense, this was something to say back then. This was something beautiful. So I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, any other questions? Or I think I'll begin. Dar kucha didam juvani barik muza, sar ta qadamash niginayu firuza, sar ta qadamash niginayu firuza, dilash ba manu chashmash bahar darwaza, sar ta qadamash نگینه فیروزه دیلش با منو چشمش به هر دروازه در کوچه تنگ با هم نشستیم من و یار از سوزش دل دک زدیم در دیوار این رنگی برنگشتم و این حالی بهار هیچ کس به جهان ندیده چون مغم یار این رنگی برنگ گشتم و این حالی بهار هیچ کس به جهان ندیده چون مغم یار در کوچه بودم سبب دستم دادی مانندی روخم سرخ و سفیدم دادی این وعده تو چی بود که بر من دادی پایم به زمین نمیرسد شادی این وعده تو چی بود که بر من دادی پایم به زمین نمیرسد شادی رویت گلم میماند اگر آب دهی زلفت زرم میماند اگر تاب دهی یک بوسه اگر بر من غمناک دهی گویا که هزار تشنه را آب دهی داده سی اسباب جهان حسرت به دنیا دار میماند زی حیفی گل به دستی گل فروشان خار میماند عجایب مردمان بودین در این عمری دو سه روزه همه میروند و یک خالقی یکتا میماند عجایب مردمان بودین در این عمری دو سه روزه همه میروند و یک خالقی یکتا میماند زینهار مرا تو بر سری خانی کسی به قرب شوی اگر خوری نانی کسی یک لقمه نان اگر بیستادت داری بهتر بدان زی بر بریانی کسی اگر خوری نانی کسی یک لقمه نان اگر بیستاد داری بهتر بدان زی بر بریانی کسی چشمی بدی خلق به چشمی مستت نرسد آفت به لبانی می پرستت نرسد از پیش خدا همین مراد می طلبم بر قدیم مبارکت شکسته نرسد از پیش خدا همین مراد می طلبم بر قدیم مبارکت شکسته نرسد از درکی درای من نگاهی تو کنم اندیشه به چشمانی سیاهی تو کنمه من مال ندارم کی زکاتی تو کنمه یک جانی عزیز دارم و قربانت کنم من مال ندارم کی زکاتی تو کنم یک جانی عزیز دارم و قربانت کنم داده های نازنین امروز شما با سیر گلزار آمدید های نازنین امروز شما با سیر گلزار آمدید های آب گشته است این دلی من از نگاه مستی تو های نازنین امروز شما با سیر گلزار آمدید های میمورن من از جمعت برهم فیغان از دستی تو های نازنین امروز شما با سیر گلزار آمدید های من با تو دل بستم با دیگران دل بستی تو های نازنین امروز شما با سیر گلزار آمدید های مثل مرغ و ماهیان افتاده در دستی تو های نازنین امروز شما با سیر گلزار آمدید بای 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 ابرو کشدو میماره بای 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 ابری کشدو میماره جوانی نازنینی اهلی گردمه ابری کشدو میماره بای 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 ابری کشدو میماره جوانی نازنینی اهلی گردمه ابرو کشدو میماره بای 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 ابری کشدو میماره سرم را گربوی از تو نگردمه ابرو کشدو میماره بای 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 ابرو کشدو میماره سرم را گربوری با خنجر تیزه ابری کشدو میماره بای 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 ابری کشدو میماره بخون جبلان زنان گردی تو کردمه ابری کشدو میماره بای 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 ابرو کشدو میماره سری چشم رسیده تشنمانمه ابری کشدو میماره بای 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 ابرو کشدو میماره بخون جبلان زنان گردی تو گشتمه ابرو کشدو میماره بای 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 ابرو کشدو میماره بای 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 ابرو کشدو میماره گردم زی لبانی شکرینت از خالی سیاهی تو انبرینت با تیغی دو ابر کشتی ما را مردم همه گویند آفرینت با تیغی دو ابر کشتی ما را مردم همه گفتن آفرینت گر بدهی زکات حسنت یک بوسه روی نازنینت در دل نزند مثال مجنون روزی که 200,000 بیند در دل نزند مثال مجنون روزی که 200,000 بیند در دل نزند مثال مجنون روزی که 200,000 بیند 100 سال شود عاشقی او محبوبش در کنار گیرد رخساره او چو غنچه گل بیش کوفته چو نوبهار بیند رخساره او چو غنچه گل بیش کوفته چو نوبهار بیند من سرود صفت برای یارم به خط سری خود بدار بیند من سرود صفت برای یارم به خط سری خود بدار بیند ای یار تصدق 100 بار تصدق 100 بار چی باشد 100 بار تصدق 100 بار چی باشد 100 بار تصدق. Thank you.
Beautiful, Rahmat, Rahmat. That was amazing. Thank you so much. Are there some I'm just like asking, are there, well, we do have other questions in the chat. I was just asking if there are some, I could recognize a couple of words from Arabic and also from Hebrew. So maybe it will be interesting just to, or not from Hebrew here. Or maybe it's just like, which.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Like I said, khalqi means folk. 1 second. Я занят, я тебе перезвоню. Хорошо. Okay, bye. Sorry. Okay. Khalqi means folk or people or peoples. And it is an Arabic word that went into Persian and is a word we still use today. This word qadam literally means your foot or your step. This is also Arabic. Nigina and firuza are types of precious stones. I don't know the exact translation, but both come from Persian and Arabic. And they're also girls' names, but we don't traditionally put them because they're way too like Persian. We traditionally put Jewish names, but secular or non-Jews in Central Asia will sometimes use these names because those are the names of like, just like the normal, like Brittany or Michelle, something like in the United States. Other words, no, not let's go down. Busa, we say in Arabic as well, or in Persian, it is the very formal word to say kiss. When we like to kiss, but when we are speaking colloquially, we'll use the Turkic word muchi, but that's only when we're speaking. So this song is like, it's a very formal and poetic type of songs that you hear at weddings and other like events. And the actual, like one of the style, it's called yakahoni, that you can sing it as I was singing without instruments or just a cappella. Yakahoni is like a cappella, like one sings. Like it could be a group or it could be one giving to each other, like back and forth, things like that. Ajoib, Arabic meaning amazing, comes from the word ajab or ajaib, which is the plural form, meaning amazing. Khalik, which literally comes from Arabic, meaning like Borei Olam in Hebrew, or the creator of the world. Khaliq in Arabic, someone that creates. And makhluk is a creature. So just teaching you some grammar there. And the rest of this song is very Persian. And the actual song itself is a Bukharian Jewish folk song that we, the Jews, sing, but also the Muslims sing, because it is a very standard Persian that it's known by like all of the communities. And we picked up some things from them. I'm not sure if Muslims picked up any traditions from the Bukharian Jews, but Bukharian Jews living in Central Asia for almost two millennia picked up a lot besides the language from their non-Jewish neighbors, especially like this, like saying, Shomadid or Rahmat or Marhamat, saying please and thank you or welcome when you put your hand on your heart. That's a very Central Asian, a very Eastern people thing to do. Like in Southeast Asia, they bow, like, and we also bow our heads. So it's like it's like a give and take kind of thing, so to speak. Yeah, and like the majority of this song is standard literary Persian, and a lot of it has Arabic roots. Qurban, like in Hebrew, korban, meaning sacrifice. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions? I see the chat is blowing up. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
I think Gabriel had a question. So Gabriel, if you like to say your question, so we don't have, yeah, it will be interesting to listen to your question. Let me just see. Gabriel had a question about learning. Yes, Gabriel.
Sorry, I was just connecting my microphone.
Hello.
Just in terms of other resources from the textbook that you would stress for learning Bukhari.
Unfortunately, we had a website called bejews.com, like Bukharian Jews. It was a good free way to actually learn phrases and things. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of resource out there online as opposed to this book. This is why I mentioned it. It's only $14.99. I mean, I don't teach it formally. I'm very busy with a lot of things right now. It was something like I was thinking maybe to do like online kind of things with different friends are saying, oh, you love this language, you know it so well, you should teach it. People would definitely want to learn it. I'm like, yes, I definitely would. But yeah, I'm so busy with so many other things right now. But in terms of like resources, there's not that much online. But this book, honestly, something that I helped edit, is like the best thing for English language speakers. And it has everything you need. Everything you need and so much more. And it's very inexpensive. I wish I could tell the author to, just give me the PDF and I'll send it to you all. But he's going to be like, no, go buy it. There is
there an audio file included?
There is not, but the good thing about audio, you can hear it spoken and sung in so many different places on YouTube. If you type Bukharian music or Bukharian Jewish music, you can hear how it's pronounced. And then also, if you guys want to add me on Facebook, I'm going to write, this is my Facebook name. You'll see me sitting. I went to 2 years ago, I went to Madrid, and in front of the big holiday tree, Christmas tree, light display, sitting on a fence. That is my profile picture. If you want to send me a message and like ask me anything related to Bukharian language or like pronunciation or whatever, and I could send you a voice note, please contact me. I would love to share, my knowledge with you. And yeah, it's very fun. But anyways, thank you so much for that. Any other questions?
Yes, my name is Karen. Yes, my name is Karen Pliskin, and I studied Farsi a gazillion years ago. And this song seems to me like it is a classical Persian song, not only with the language, but also with the melody and the singing of it. And you did a beautiful job. But,
I appreciate it.
But there are references to Persian culture, not Jewish culture in this. The eyebrows, the way, the stones, and at the very end with Majnun. And Majnun is a character in famous epic poem by Nizami, Leila Majnun. Majnun was a crazy guy. He went crazy over love. And so there's a tremendous amount. Why is this considered to be a Jewish song and not, I mean, obviously.
It's part of our culture now. So Bukharian Jews living in Central Asia, we picked up so much from our neighbors, including the language. Like the language in itself is a Persian language. We just flecked it with Hebrew and Aramaic. We living there for so long, we picked up a lot of customs from our neighbors. And if they didn't like conflict with our Jewish practices, a lot of it we adopted as our own, or just as a pan-Persian speaking community, because our language is very similar and almost mutually intelligible with the non-Jewish dialects spoken in Samarkand and Bukhara. There's just, some expressions and some of the pronunciation might differ, but the language itself, I'd say like they're 85-90% mutually intelligible.
I understand that. My question is, why is a Persian song that is secular Persian considered to be Jewish Bukharian?
Because this is what we adopted it. We adopted it. Basically, we lived amongst Muslims for thousands of years, or since the 7th century.
I know the history.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I just want to ask you a question. Have you ever been to the Bukharian quarter of Jerusalem, which was absolutely gorgeous until the 1980s, when it was destroyed, unfortunately, because Israel does not prize the ethnic and architectural heritage. So it's now apartment buildings for Haredim, and I was so
it's a very
sad to
Haredi,
see that.
Yeah, I went there. It's very sad to see what is going on, you know, in the current state of things. I was there briefly. I saw the street names, you know, after different Bukharian Jewish writers, like or figures like Musayev, Shlomo Musayev, also a descendant of Maimonides, who moved there from Bukhara. The state of things where the community used to live, because that's not a Bukharian community, that's not a Bukharian neighborhood anymore. The Bukharian neighborhoods of Israel are in Tel Aviv, in Ramla, in Netanya, in Neve Yaakov in Jerusalem, in Ramot, and in different parts. So it's a little bit, it's very sad to see what has, you know, been going on with the community. Ruben, thank you for posting the link to the book.
I just wanted to add that sometimes we want to draw very clear lines and very strict lines of what we can consider as Jewish or not Jewish. But as somebody here in the chat wrote, when you look at Hasidism and how they are taking non-Jewish melodies and adapting them and so on, and when you look at certain expressions in Yiddish and so on, you're going to find that there's a lot of conversation between those different languages. And perhaps in the next session that we're having is on Judeo-Arabic, and maybe, I'm not sure if that's the case for the next session, but the presenter might tell us a story, or well, a recording of a story told in Judeo-Arabic about that has to do with the Mecca. And it's certainly not, we're not talking Jewish about the Kotel, but it's really interesting, and he can explain very well why he decides to use this story to tell when he's teaching Judeo-Arabic. And so thank you so much, Rahmat, Bobby. It has been a pleasure listening to you. And you have already these greetings by the end of our session. If you want to practice them, you are more than welcome. And can we just give a huge Rahmat to Bobby? Rahmat, a großen Dank in Yiddish. Toda rabba. Muchas gracias. And we're now going to continue to the last part. Thank you so much, Bobby. Again, it has been really, really interesting, and it's amazing that you could share with us this very, a little bit about the history, and also some basic things that you say, greetings, and also some art and singing. Thank you so much. And now I would like Sarah Benor will be speaking to us. Sarah, I think you are here already. Oh, yeah. Can you unmute yourself?
Hello.
Hello. And we have the pleasure of someone very important from the Jewish Languages Project to introduce to us a little bit the topic of Jewish languages. So welcome.
Shalom Aleichem, everybody. This is good to sein da mit euch. I know I'm not supposed to speak all in Yiddish, don't worry. Today I'm going to be talking about a very brief introduction to Jewish languages, and I'm going to start by giving you a little map. Here is this little purple dot in the middle of the screen, the land of Israel, where the Jewish people began. And as we spread throughout the world, especially North Africa, Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia, we picked up the local languages and we Judaified them. We created Jewish versions of Arabic, Persian, Aramaic, Greek, Italian, etc. And then the two most famous Jewish languages, Yiddish and Ladino, are actually exceptions in this history because they originated in one place and then were brought to a new place, and they were maintained for centuries in that new place. But most Jewish languages are based on a language near them, based on a language spoken by their non-Jewish neighbors. And then they have distinctive features in the way that they speak. What are those distinctive features? Well, Hebrew and Aramaic words, especially using full texts in Hebrew and Aramaic, our sacred languages, and then word for word translation into those languages, into the language from Hebrew and Aramaic, and then loan words for various concepts. Let me just give you a few examples of that in a minute. But first, I also want to point out the other distinctive features, which might be influences from a previous Jewish language, from a language that was spoken by the ancestors of the current speakers, and then other distinctive features. And these might be just a minor distinction in how you say something, or it might be a completely different system of grammar. And then throughout history, most Jewish languages have been written in the Hebrew writing system. And let me just point out that these languages are now in decline. The long-standing languages that Jews have spoken for centuries are in decline because of various historical developments from the 18th to the 21st centuries, including emancipation, nationalisms in various countries, urbanization, various educational policies, and in the 20th century, some terrible phenomena, including the Holocaust and Stalinism. And then in the 19th to 21st centuries, various migrations, mostly to the Americas, to Israel, and to Western Europe, and other parts of the world too. And so these migrations led to the creation of new Jewish language varieties, like Jewish versions of English, Latin American, Spanish, and Portuguese, Swedish, French, German, Russian, Hungarian, etc. And these new Jewish languages are thriving and developing in new ways. But the old ones are declining. And so let me just give you a few examples of some of the distinctive features. So here you see a, hold on, there we go. Here you see a 16th century Hebrew and Judeo-Persian Bible translation. So you have the Hebrew text here and the Persian here. And then here's a Yiddish one from the 20th century where you have the Hebrew on one side and the Yiddish on the other. And here is a 19th century version of Saadia Gaon's translation of the Tanakh into Judeo-Arabic. And so there'll be one sentence in Hebrew, one in Aramaic, and one in Arabic. Here is a Jewish Neo-Aramaic Haggadah from the 20th century, where you have the Hebrew on this side and the Jewish Aramaic on this side. And then here are some other examples of the ways that Hebrew and another language can interact. This is a macaronic song, meaning there's a line in one language, Hebrew, and then a line in another language, French. And it involves a lot of wordplay and would be understood at different levels by people who speak these different languages. And I just want to give you a few examples of loan words from Hebrew and Aramaic. Of course, there are many loan words for religious items and concepts, like words for the Sabbath, Shabbat, Shabbat, and Shabbos, different pronunciations of that same word. Sometimes there are different words for the same referent, like in Judeo-Italian, ashkivenu, in Judeo-Spanish, arvit, and in Yiddish, ma'ariv, for the evening prayer service. And sometimes it's different in some languages, like monged for Jewish holiday in Judeo-Italian, mwed in Judeo-Spanish, and yontif in Yiddish. And then there are other religious concepts, such as I'm just going to put these on the screen and let you take a look at them because I won't pronounce them quite right. And you see that sometimes they are used for not only the religious concept, but also for metaphorical concepts. So for example, in Judeo-Italian, mezuzah means not only the thing that you put on your doorpost, the scroll, but also a beautiful woman. Why? Because perhaps the speaker wanted to kiss that beautiful woman as he kisses the mezuzah. And then there also were many cases of Hebrew and Aramaic loan words used for secret language, such as this famous quote from Yiddish, which is "Daber nicht, der Orel is maven kol dibber," which literally means "Don't speak, the uncircumcised one understands every word." And this would be used in a context where the speaker wanted to warn the other person that another person nearby understands German, and they couldn't say, the words in German because they would understand it. So they used Hebrew words for the content words, daber and oral, maven, kol dibber. So these words are from Hebrew, but the grammatical words, the function words like nicht, der, and is are from Germanic. So it's okay if they understand nicht, der, and is, but it's not okay if they understand all these other words. And there are also words for non-Jews in many different Jewish languages. Just to give you a few examples, non-Jewish holiday, the word chaga in various languages, and arel, meaning uncircumcised, ngarel or orel, or goy. And then words for Jesus, like il udo, that one, oto ha'ish, that man, or tola in Yiddish, meaning the hanging one. And it was important for Jews to have these secretive ways of talking about non-Jews because of the negative relations between Jews and non-Jews at various points in history. Hebrew and Aramaic was also used for euphemism, especially talking about bodily functions and body parts, such as in Judeo-Greek, ruchoth, meaning heirs, but also farts, or rimonim, pomegranates, but also breasts, and tachath, meaning under, but also meaning rear end. And some of my favorites are from Yiddish. Geyanaf nekovim means to go to the bathroom, and it comes from the blessing that is said after using the bathroom, which has the word nikavim in it, nikovim meaning holes. So nikovim gedolim is number 2, and nekavim ketanim is number 1, different bodily functions when going to the bathroom. And my very favorite, asher yotzor papir, toilet paper, because asher yotzar is the name of the blessing that is said after using the toilet. And finally, Hebrew and Aramaic loanwords are not limited to these. They're also used for words without real life reference, like in Western Yiddish or Judeo-German, bekitzer or tekef umiyad, and Judeo-Arabic, afilu and vadai. So what is happening with these languages today? Well, they are endangered, except for Yiddish. Yiddish is actually doing quite well because of its vibrant use in Hasidic communities and also strong post-vernacular engagement with Yiddish outside of Hasidic communities. There is some post-vernacular engagement in Ladino, but most of the other languages, there's only a little post-vernacular engagement or none. And yes, so hold on one second. I know I don't have too much time left, so let me just end by showing you this chart here. So you can see Judeo-Tajik, which I guess Bobby must have spoken about before I arrived. Hi, Bobby. Is not quite as endangered as some of the others. There are more native speakers that are under the age of 80. And same with, so that's Bukharian or Judeo-Tajik. Judeo-Tat, also known as Juhuri, is also relatively okay in that it is still spoken by some young people. But most of these other languages are considered to be highly endangered. So in conclusion, because most of these long-standing Jewish language varieties are endangered, we really need to document them now. And not just their language, but also the cultures and the histories that go along with them. And we need to share that knowledge, because if you just document a language and don't act on it, then it will just be a museum piece, right? So we need to share that information with others. Why? Well, because of the native speakers of these languages who don't want their languages to die, such as Simon Mardachayev from New York, originally from Azerbaijan, a speaker of Judeo-Tat or Juhuri, or those who have passed away, such as Sarah Cohen, one of the last speakers of Jewish Malayalam from Cochin, India. It's also important for us, for academia, for scholarship, for students who will eventually want to learn these languages and won't be able to if they're not documented now. And it's also useful for Jews around the world to know about each other and about their various languages. It's also perhaps useful for other groups, indigenous, immigrant, and religious groups who would benefit from learning about each other's languages and about their documentation processes. So how can we do this? Well, I run an organization called the Jewish Language Project, and we run a website that shares information about it. I've published some books about Jewish languages, and also others have published books about Jewish languages. And there are a number of organizations that are currently working to do this important documentation work, such as Mother Tongue in Israel and the Endangered Language Alliance, Wikitongues, and Living Tongues Institute in the United States. And our mission at the Jewish Language Project is to promote research on, awareness about, and engagement surrounding the many languages spoken and written by Jews throughout history and around the world. And we are currently documenting endangered Iranian Jewish languages. We have an online event series. And I just actually, the reason I couldn't join you earlier is because I was running a panel on documentation of endangered languages, which you'll be able to see on our website in the next day or two. And we do various educational programs. And I would love to see a number of projects happening on these languages in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was really, really interesting. And it's like a very good introduction to the Jewish Languages Festival we're organizing. So thank you so much for presenting, and thank you so much, Bobby and Sarah. And as I said, I'm going to open now some breakout rooms in different languages in case any of you want just to practice that language, in case you know it, and you can just join, or if you want to leave, we have already finished with the official program. Next week, we're going to have Judeo-Arabic. Dr. Asaf Bar Moshe will introduce us to the history of the language. And then we're going to have someone to come and tells us jokes in Baghdadi Judeo-Arabic. So that's going to be exciting. We're also going to have some music. And I just wanted as well to thank the Memorial Foundation for Jewish Culture and the Yiddish House London for organizing this, and the help of Germán, Arturo, and well, yes. So the person who will be telling jokes again is Oded Amit from Ramat Gan. He will be joining us to tell jokes in Judeo-Arabic. So now I'm going to open the rooms in 4 different languages, and you're going to be able to, in 5, and you're going to be able to join them. I'm just going to rename them quickly. So in case you want to practice or something like that, I think with this, if you have any questions about the program or any questions for Sarah, please, I think it's an amazing project you are running. And it's, to be honest, I didn't know much about other Jewish languages. As I said, I know Yiddish, I understand Ladino because I speak Spanish, and I know Hebrew as well, but I didn't know until quite recently that there was Judeo that existed, and so many other Jewish languages. Do you have any other questions? And I think someone had a question about the presentation, and where could they find that presentation, because they found it really interesting.
Oh yes, I can send the slides if you'd like. You can also see longer versions of that at jewishlanguages.org.
Would you like to write down in the chat the
Yes, sure. I'll send that link right now. We post the videos of our previous events. So here is the link. There you go.
Great. Okay, so I have now opened all the rooms in case you want to join and practice any language. That's up to you. And I hope to see a lot of you next week for Judeo-Arabic. Thank you so much. Rahmat, as you say in Bukhari.